Hello guys, this is your strategy consultant and mentor Prashant. Welcome to the Operational Excellence series where we are covering problem solving techniques. Hope you guys have enjoyed my last two videos. This is part 3 of the same where we'll be covering yet one more interesting topic today. In this part 3, we are going to cover the use of 3 events for pattern recognition. It's going to be very interesting today. So let's begin with the 3 events. 3 events for pattern recognition. As simple and unusual it may sound, but it's once again a very effective technique, just like the 5 eyes and the 4 watts. Let's try to understand what this is about. It's a technique for identifying patterns and envisaging trends. This technique involves proactively monitoring situations and raising red flags. Recognize patterns even before a trend is visible and prepare preemptively. That's the whole purpose of using this particular tool of 3 events. I understand that many of you guys would be wondering what is this 3 events and such a simplistic technique, how would that help us or anyone for that matter. But you need to understand that no matter how advanced technology has become, humans are still the best at pattern recognition. Trust me, even scientists agree with me. And using this particular tool of 3 events, you can identify the deviation, note the frequency, ask when, keep asking when, obviously 3 times, and then try to establish a particular trend. And this 3 events is an effective method to assist in risk management. There's a diagram on your screen right now. Alongside the diagram is a small table which I call as the pattern recognition matrix. Now, before you try to go ahead and understand the diagram on the screen, I'll need to brief you on the meaning of what a process is and what a system is. Now, process is nothing but a series of steps, activities, or tasks arranged in a particular order where you have an input, there is a particular operation or a process, and there's a particular output. So those are the components of a process. When you look at a system, it is a series of processes interacting with each other which form a system. To make it easier for you to understand, consider a vehicle. I believe every one of you drives a vehicle, be it a car or a bike or any other vehicle. So in the case of a car, now car is a complete system which enables us to move from destination A to destination B if we follow the instructions of driving and obviously traffic rules. Now, when we consider the car as a complete system, it is made up of different processes that are interacting with each other. For example, your steering wheel is a process, your gearbox is a process, your acceleration and braking system is a process. So there are different processes which are involved in this system called as car. So likewise, no matter what industry you belong to, no matter what particular job function you're carrying out, you are always part of a system, right? And there are various systems that exist in an organization. So in order to understand this diagram, you'll have to look at the fact that a system consists of several processes which are arranged in a particular order, and there can be multiple systems interacting with each other in a particular order. It may be sequential, it may not be sequential, but for ease of understanding, what is shown on the screen is, let us say there's something called as system X, which has process XA and XB, which probably is interacting with something called as system Y, which also has its own processes, process YA and process YB, and these two processes probably are a subset of a larger larger system, system Z. System Z once again has its own process ZA and process ZB. Now, each of these processes will have their own interaction within the system, but outside the process definition, the systems also interact with each other, shown by the red arrow marks. So system X is interacting with system Y is interacting with system Z, and in turn system Z might be interacting with system X. So there's this continuous interaction that goes on, and which all these processes and systems together are assisting you in carrying out your routine operations. Now, how do we go about applying three events for identifying a pattern? It's pretty simple. You need to ask when 3 times. So the first one would be, when did the first deviation occur? Because when we talk about pattern or establishing a trend, we're talking about deviation from the norm. Now, when you have established processes and systems, there will be certain parameters within which and control limits within which all of these items and components need to operate. So whenever there's a deviation, you need to identify when did the first deviation occur. Then go ahead and ask the second when. That is, when did the second deviation occur? Likewise, last but not the least, the third time you have to ask this when again. When did the third deviation occur? Now, when you ask these 3 events in a particular manner, you will be able to identify a particular pattern, which can be explained by the table next to the diagram on the screen. This table is basically a pattern recognition matrix, where you have system X, system Y, and system Z as 3 columns, and you have the 3 events showing the 3 instances of deviation as the rows. Now, considering any system, let's say for example system X, if there was a deviation for the first time in system X for any process, whether it is process XA or process XB, now the first occurrence of deviation can always be considered as a random occurrence, and the second occurrence of deviations can still be considered as a mere coincidence. But when such a similar deviation occurs 3 times, that is the third time, it can no more be random or a coincidence. It has to indicate a particular kind of pattern which could repeat in the future. So that is the applicability of the 3 events. Now, this is when we are talking about just one system, say system X. Now, in system X, maybe the first time there was a deviation in process XA. You could probably ignore it because it would have been just a random occurrence. The second time there's a deviation in process XB within the same system X. This also could be ignored considering as a coincidence. But the third time there's a deviation again in process XA within the same system. Now, there goes a pattern with it, and this is, as I said earlier, confined within the system. Now, if you look at the whole organization as a whole, then you need to look at the rows in the table, where there could be a deviation in system X, there could be a second deviation in system Y, and a third deviation in system Z. Now, it could get complicated when you're trying to analyze this in a real world scenario. So to simplify it, let me put it this way, that in the first instance, the deviation occurred in process XA within system X. And in the second instance, the deviation probably occurred in process YB of system Y. And the third time, the deviation occurred in process ZA of system Z. Now, each of these deviations, if we consider as an instance, they may not appear to be correlated. But once you are identifying all these 3 different deviations, you can no more ignore it, and you need to investigate in order to establish, in order to find out if there's a trend, or if these deviations are interlinked or interconnected to each other. That's the utility of applying 3 events for pattern recognition. Now, we'll go ahead and try to see a real world example to understand it better. There's a diagram on your screen which you can see. If you have seen my last two videos, I have been covering same example to demonstrate the application of these different tools. So I would go ahead with the same. Consider that you have a retail store and are faced with the problem of rising shrinkage levels. Now, without going into further details, what you're trying to do is that you are listing out all the control methods that you have which can arrest, prevent, or reduce shrinkage at your retail store. So you're listing out all the control methods or different systems that you have in place, starting from anti-theft tags, which can be called a system X, CCTV cameras, system Y, and the security guards can be called a system Z. So you have three different systems in place to kind of prevent shrinkage at your retail store. Now, when you apply the three vents for pattern recognition, you need to ask these three vents to each of these control methods or systems to spot the deviation and identify a particular pattern and establish a trend in order to reach any logical conclusion. So let's take up system X first, the anti-theft tags. Now, you have been told that some of the anti-theft tags have been malfunctioning or not working properly in the last few months. So you start your investigation and you realize that with the first one, you get the answer that 3 months ago, 5 tags were not working. With the second one, you get the answer that 2 months ago, 12 tags were damaged. And with the last one, you realize that last month 27 tags were found with a defect. Now that does raise a red flag because 27 plus 12 plus 5, that makes 44 tags which are defective or not working at your retail store that has costly merchandise. Now these anti-theft tags are basically kind of consumables which could be easily replaced and not of much high value considering the type of merchandise that you're selling. So you might choose to ignore it, although there is a particular pattern which you can see. So what you do is you go ahead and apply these three events to the second system that you have in place, that is the CCTV cameras. And in this system also, with the three events, you realize that 6 months ago 2 cameras were not working, 3 months ago 3 cameras were found damaged, and in the last month 7 cameras have been found to be defective. So that makes it 7 plus 3 plus 2. That is 12 cameras are not working in your entire facility. Now that is a huge red flag for you. So with 2 red flags already in hand, you go ahead and investigate the third system, that is system Z, about the manpower deployment of security guards. If you are not aware of the process, at any facility where security is a concern, the security guards are rotated on a regular basis. So when you apply the 3 events technique here for pattern recognition, you realize that 4 months ago 8 guards were rotated, probably out of 10 guards. 3 months ago only 3 guards were rotated, and 2 months back only 2 guards were rotated. So that means you have a lot of guards on premise, that is as of now probably 7 guards on premise who are performing the duty at a fixed location rather than being on rotation. Now that's one more huge red flag. So when you identified all these 3 different red flags or patterns that you have recognized and you plot a graph, then you'll get what is displayed on the right hand side of the screen right now. There's a graph which shows the result of the 3 events technique applied, and it definitely shows a particular pattern that the numbers are rising over a period of time, that is from 3 to 6 months. That is, from the last 2 quarters there are certain things that are occurring which have not been captured by your existing software or data analytics system. See, these kind of trends would rarely be captured by any system that performs any kind of analysis. This is possible only by a human being. So when you've identified this particular kind of pattern across 3 different systems, that is a huge red flag. And you arrive at the conclusion that this is not a simple case of rising shrinkage at your retail store. It is also highly probable that you are at the verge of facing a theft or a heist. That is, heist is actually in progress under your very own nose in your own retail store. Now, that's a very useful and a great insight as far as risk management is concerned, and that is the utility of this 3 wins for pattern recognition. I hope the example was useful to understand how to apply 3 wins for pattern recognition. Now let me cover how not to use these 3 wins. This is very basic and plain simple kind of advice. Do not be irrelevant by asking irrelevant questions when using 3 wins, like when were the cameras installed in the first place. This is not going to lead you anywhere. Number 2, do not trust machines. That is, don't be over dependent on any system that you have. For example, you should not discourage anyone from carrying out a 3-win technique to find a pattern by saying, I don't see any red flag, the analytics are fine, because that's gonna stop your progress in the first place. And obviously do not trust people too, because having too much of trust or faith in the people can lead you to ignore certain things while using this technique. For example, a security contractor has a good reputation. One should not do that mistake. And do not be dogmatic and say that the anti-theft tags are ISO, IEC certified. That actually doesn't matter as far as the case at hand is concerned. And do not be complacent by saying theft or heist seems to be a very far-fetched idea. So when it comes to risk management, nothing is beyond the perimeter. And do not micromanage by saying we need a loss prevention manager to handle this. So that's not the way to go ahead when you're applying the 3 wins technique for solving a problem. That brings us to the end of part 3. I hope that the concept is clear to all of you. I'll be coming back with part 4 covering one more tool for problem solving. Till then, take care. Ciao.